in privacy legislation, in the privacy sector, there are two terms that are very important, opt-in and opt-out. If I had to recommend to your listeners, Shelly, if you don't have an opt-in requirement in your country, go for the opt-out, because that's very important. Using personal data in marketing is not an option, it's a fact.
Welcome to the Growth Genius series brought to you by DMA Asia and Infidigit. My name is Shelly and I'm your host. Today our guest speaker is Mary Teahan. Mary is head of APDA, the alliance that runs Ad Choices program in Argentina. She has over 20 years experience in privacy and data protection as they relate to marketing. Mary also chairs the institutional and international relations commissions at DMA Argentina and is honorary president of the association. She's a former chair of the GDMA, Global Alliance of Data-Driven Marketing Associations, where she presently a member of the executive committee. A very warm welcome, Mary.
Thank you, Shelly. It's good to be with you.
That's great. To start with, please tell us a little about you, your company, and your role to our viewers and listeners.
Okay, well, actually, I represent International Forums Argentina, but I was born and raised in the United States. And I met my Argentine husband at the University of Chicago, where we both got our MBAs. And we came down here to Buenos Aires after getting our degrees. And I've been living and working in Argentina ever since. I have a long professional career as a professional marketer in leading companies in Argentina, first in the financial services sector, and then in the consumer durable sector. And the last 2 years working in companies, I was the marketing director for the recently privatized Argentine Post Office. And that was a marvelous plan, a marvelous project, but it failed mostly for political reasons. Oh. And at that point, I decided I was going to switch sides of the counter. I'd been a marketer employing agency services, among other things, in big companies. And so in the early 2000s, I took over an integrated marketing communications agency and started receiving big companies as my clients, working for like Argentina Telecom, Volkswagen, Xerox, the natural gas utility, and other large companies. And after 9 years of doing that, I said, well, actually, at this stage in my career, I would like to do something with my marketing and consulting talents and experience that makes for a better world. And so I sold that agency with its commercial customers in it. And I had some NGO, whether we now call them OSCs, social organizations, charities, as customers. And I founded the agency I have today, which just works with social organizations, charitable organizations, and sometimes with the corporate social responsibility areas of corporations in the ways in which they will cooperate with the charitable organizations. And so when I go to sleep at night, I'll have a good day, bad day. You always have them whenever you're working. But I say at least when I go to sleep at night, I know I did something and put my little contribution towards a better world through my professional career. So as chair of the Argentine DMA in the year 2000, the Argentine Congress was considering data protection law, personal data protection law, modeled after the European directive from 1995 at that time. And so I was involved in the lobby, presenting our marketing views with respect to personal data protection. And ever since then, I have been in contact with regulators in Argentina in representation of our DMA regarding marketing and data protection. I also chaired, as you said, the global DMA for 6 years and continue to serve on its executive committee. So global best practices is also part of my bailiwick. Mm-hmm. And I'm a university professor of marketing. I'm an author of books and articles on marketing and privacy, and a frequent speaker in events and occasions such as your very interesting series of interviews, Shelly, and thank you for inviting me.
Wow, great professional background and great move from USA to Argentina.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Mary, you have been working in privacy and data protection for so long, but I'll start with the basic. When did privacy and data protection become so important in marketing?
Well, many people might not realize since the 1960s and the 1970s, those of us who know how to practice direct marketing, which has now evolved into digital marketing, the associations involved in direct marketing created what they call preference services because they could tell that they were basically using a physical mail, postal mail, letters and catalogs and things like that, and later telephone marketing. And there were people who, for ecological reasons, didn't want to see their mailboxes filled with paper that they weren't interested in, and other people who did not want to receive any telephone marketing calls. So these associations established in the private sector lists where people could sign up and say, "Don't phone me." And the members of the associations would then use that list and refrain from contacting these people. In privacy legislation in the privacy sector, there are two terms that are very important, opt-in and opt-out. Opt-in means that marketing, if you've got an opt-in system, marketers cannot contact a prospect to try to communicate and sell something to them of goods or services without a previous okay from that person to receive communications. Opt-out system is that the marketers can contact anyone on most of the data they have. There's very few types of data that are like children and sensitive health data and sexual orientation and things like that, where you can't. But in 95% of the things that we marketers would want to contact people, we can do that without prior consent. But the opt-out means that when that person says, "I don't want to receive more emails from you, I don't want to receive your interest-based advertising like in APDA and Ad Choices, I don't want to receive your telephone calls." Once you receive an opt-out, then you have to stop contacting that person. Now, obviously, the industry prefers the opt-out system because it's virtually impossible to get people in great numbers to opt in, to say, "Yes, I want to receive marketing communications with respect to bicycles," or "I want to receive marketing communications with respect to makeup or cell phones or whatever." People just won't answer. And so an opt-in is not really a very viable system for marketing. So the industry would prefer the opt-out system. I always use the example of my eldest son's wedding here in Argentina. He got married and we were having a party and he wanted to invite like 200 people. And the service per attendee at the wedding party cost $250 per person. So you really wanted to know who was coming, who was not coming, because that was a lot of money. And not even relatives and the closest friends answered the RSVP. We had to call everybody and ask them. So that shows you, if for your friend's wedding and you know that he's going to spend a lot of money to entertain you at his wedding party, if people don't answer that, how are they going to answer me if I want to sell them makeup online? It's just, opt-in doesn't work for marketing. So obviously we need that now. The golden age of privacy legislation with respect to marketing began with the European law in 1995. And that's the one that the Argentina was copied after, in which they started to regulate that. And then in 2018, what's called GDPR, which is famous nowadays, the General Data Protection Regulation in Europe, became very famous, and they started to tighten the screws because there wasn't a whole lot of compliance with the previous directive. And they put huge fines and so forth. But actually both norms, the 1995 norm and the 2018 GDPR, will permit direct and digital marketing on an opt-in basis because they consider marketing to be a legitimate interest. So that legislation and the legislation we're trying to see passed a new law in Argentina, because the one we have is 23 years old, would allow the opt-out hopefully.
Okay.
For some reason, many companies, and many of them are international companies, have decided that they're going to go the other route with GDPR, which is prior consent, which is opt-in, and which I don't like. And so what you're going to see throughout the world is like a plethora of what they call CMPs, consent management platforms, which are sophisticated digital stacks, which allow you to obtain consent and so forth. And I really don't understand why companies that don't have to have opt-in are going for this, but I guess every company knows what they have to do. If I had to recommend to your listeners, Shelly, if you don't have an opt-in requirement in your country, go for the opt-out, because that's very important. As a matter of fact, there actually are parties in Europe, even in the European Parliament, who consider that GDPR may have overstepped its bounds in terms of privacy and data protection, to the point that they think that may be affecting the European region's competitivity in ever increasingly digital world. So that's also one of the considerations. And then finally, since 2017, the Argentine DMA has been a member of AdChoices. We're an APDA, and that is the system that sort of closes the circle that we have. You can opt out of physical letters, you can opt out of emails, you can opt out of telephone marketing, and now you can opt out interest-based ads that are done by tracking supposed interests on websites and in apps on your telephone. So now we've got the entire opt-out scene available, and it's available in Argentina, which is definitely not one of the world's leaders in this, but it's also available in the United States and Canada and most of Europe. So we've got the opt-out scene fully covered.
Okay, great. So the collection and use of personal data are the core of any business model and innovations in today's data economy. So what do consumers want with respect to privacy and data protection in marketing, and what are their concerns?
Well, I definitely agree with what you say, that the core of business models, and when I speak to corporate lawyers and so forth who are asking about this, I said, listen, using personal data in marketing is not an option, it's a fact. And we will be using it ever more. And I consider there are two dimensions that concern consumers with respect, in particularly online, but also offline. The first one is annoyance. It's interruption and so forth. So, that telemarketing call that comes in the middle of a family dinner or when you're in the shower. Your email inbox is getting so full of spam that you can't find the emails you actually want to read. Or we're also now seeing WhatsApps in messenger services that are being used for marketing, and we're in danger of having a little bit too much interruption there. So if I had to talk to marketers who would be listening to this interview, I would say, just because you can send a message, and just because that message is really cheap or almost zero cost, doesn't mean that you should. What you need to do is try to segment and target and try to send those messages to people you have some reason to think that they actually might be interested in your offer. Like, for instance, if you send me, who I'm not exactly a spring chicken, if you send me ads for snowboard to go up to the Andes Mountains and go snowboarding down, that is very poor targeting, because I definitely am not going to buy a snowboard. So even if it's free or very low cost, don't do it. Do it only if you have an indication that this person might be interested in what you're doing. The other dimension, the first one was annoyance, is I think that marketers, we are not really involved in this, hopefully, but there's fake news, identity theft, phishing, and all sorts of scams that are going on online. Those are real problems, and it's scary. And so I think that that's another reason for concern with respect to consumers, but it's not us. Although some people from the press and some people from legislators or politicians and so forth tend to want to say, oh, it's you marketers that are doing it. No, it's not us. It's not us. Those are the scammers. Those are the dishonest people that have been throughout the history of the world. Now, the Global DMA did a survey of 16 countries, more than 20,000 interviews last year, regarding consumer attitudes toward online marketing. And what they discovered, and this is true of North America, Europe, Australia, and even Argentina, Mexico, and Brazil, they found that most people are very pragmatic with respect to sharing their personal data online with marketers. 53% on the average pragmatists. There are 29% people who are unconcerned about their data online, which is not a good idea from my point of view, because there are those bad actors out there. And 18% alone are fundamentalists. I'm private. I don't want anybody to invade me. The old Robinsons, I'm on an island all by myself. So they're the fundamentalists. So the interesting thing is that in Asia, things are a little bit different. In China and India, they're much more pragmatists. About 3/4 of the people interviewed pragmatists, and only 6% are fundamentalists, which is good. And then in Japan, it's really different. There's 39% of unconcerned, although the number of fundamentalists is about the same as in Europe and North America. So this confirms that most consumers throughout the world are not particularly worried about data privacy in an online marketing context. Okay, the annoyance factor, yes, but not the safety factor. And however, as I say, there's some members of the press and some politicians that, for their own political reasons or to sell their media to people, they try to stir up a storm with respect to privacy and marketing and so forth. So that is unfortunate and not representative of what we marketers are actually doing, and not representative of what the research shows that consumers are really concerned about.
So what specific challenges does data privacy create in the context of competition and antitrust?
Okay, well, I'm not an expert in antitrust, but certainly the concentration of power in a small number of high-tech companies is concerning, and I'm talking about Meta, Google, and Apple, among others. And I think that's being looked at by antitrust government officials, both in the United States and in Europe at least. And one problem that is happening with data protection legislation, is when they want to get really, really strict. And if you're taking the European GDPR and you're going for the consent or the opt-in side, the only thing that's doing is increasing the concentration, the power of these big players. They think that they're trying to favor the consumers, but that actually what they're doing is they're concentrating more power in these big companies, because it's difficult for small and medium-sized companies to market on their own. And so they actually have to go, the harder they make it get, they end up in the hands of Google and Apple and so forth. And a very important example of this is much touted deprecation of third-party cookies, which Apple has already put into force. And I don't know if you've noticed, but you can tell Apple, no, I actually would like to receive this interface advertising, but you'll only receive it through Apple. They won't let you receive it through other sites. And so that's the concentration of power again. Now, Google has been more prone to dialogue with the industry groups, and it has successfully put off the elimination of third-party cookies. It was originally scheduled 2022, and then there was going to be 2023. Now, sometime in 2024, perhaps, we will do this. And the reason is that they haven't found a good substitution that meets marketers' needs and affects their advertising revenues, obviously, if they don't do it. So in any case, experts are recommending that companies try to migrate to first-party relationships between the brands and websites and the apps and the consumers, to prepare for that. But the problem is that this is a major challenge for businesses in general, and many small and medium-sized businesses are not going to be able to do it. So they're going to end up even more dependent on these big tech companies. So that's, as I say, I'm not an expert on antitrust, but it certainly sounds dangerous to me.
Mm-hmm. So now, like you have already spoken about Google, Apple, and we see that the data protection and privacy environment has shifted significantly since recent years. So, what is the changing landscape in consumer privacy? What significant steps have been taken by companies like Apple, Firefox, and Google in consumer privacy? You have shared some points already, but can you please elaborate more?
Okay, well, once again, I am an expert on marketing context, and I'm not referring to fake news and manipulation of public opinion and even indoctrination of individuals. That I don't know if you've seen some of the Netflix movies, such as The Social Dilemma and The Big Hack, which was referring to Facebook giving all its data to Cambridge Analytica, and they used it for sort of scary purposes in elections throughout the world, not only in the United States. They also used it in Argentina. I don't know about if you've had any experience of that. Well, these dangers certainly exist, and I think that the big players are trying to address these issues. Now, we don't know with Elon Musk and Twitter what's going to happen there. There's crazy things happening in the digital landscape. And once again, I'd like to say that we well-intentioned marketers are really not guilty of these sins, and I certainly hope that the big tech guys manage to get this under control. What we do have to do as marketers, however, is to show that we are the good guys. And we have to keep our act clean and be conscious of the privacy and the annoyance factor to consumers, and try to increase the public's trust in marketers. And it's as simple as that.
Yeah, that's right. So, my next question is that what do international industry leaders recommend that marketers do, regardless of whether their country has a formal data protection legislation in place or no?
Okay, I would recommend that our listeners log on to globaldma.com. Globaldma.com is very short, very easy, because we developed last year our global privacy principles, which are exactly this. We're telling people, if you're in a country where there is no privacy legislation, you should be doing this anyhow in order to show you're the good guy and you want the consumer trust. And we also want to show this to policymakers, legislators, and regulators throughout the world, to tell them what we think that they should be looking at. And there are 7 points, and they're very, very developed in detail on this website. I'll just name what the general principles are. One is to value privacy, to really say, I'm a marketer and I really am going to think about the right of my consumers to privacy and data protection. You have to be clear and transparent. If you're asking for an opt-in, be careful that you tell them what they're opting into and basically what the data will be used for. You should respect the individual's preferences, and so that if you get an opt-out, by God, you really need to respect that. This is something that in Argentina we still use a lot, and particularly in my sector, which is the charitable sector. We've found that many people won't close a monthly donation online. And so we get the lead and we call them on the phone and we talk to them and they answer their questions, and the probability of closing a donation online is like 200 times higher. On the phone is 200 times higher than doing it online. So if we get an opt-out, someone says, please don't call me anymore, you gotta be careful not to call. Now, down here, we've got the portability of cell phone numbers. And so the cell phone companies are just going wild, calling people all the time to try to get them to switch their companies.
Yeah.
And The one thing that is very common, I've even spoken to our regulators here in Argentina, and they complain about this too, is that they don't tell their telemarketers that if you get an opt-out, you have to accept it and report it, and so the company has to take that person off their marketing list. They don't respect the opt-out request, and that is a big problem. That is a major problem. So one of the principles is respect the individual's preferences. They say, I don't want you to call me anymore. If you want to send me an email, that's fine. If you want to send me a letter in the mail, that's fine. But don't call me on the phone. Don't call me. And that's the third principle: value privacy, be clear and transparent, respect individual preferences, and then process personal data ethically. And these global principles tell you what we mean by that. Take responsibility. Say, yes, I'm responsible for this, respecting privacy. Keep personal data secure. Don't have any data breaches and so forth. And finally, be accountable. Be able to prove what you're doing to protect data and respect privacy. And those are 7 principles. And once again, it's globaldma.com. And I would suggest that all the people who are listening take a look at that and check to make sure those policies are respecting those principles.
Sure. So, do you have any other suggestion for the marketeers in our audience?
I just say try to incorporate into your daily operation the 7 principles that will respect privacy. And above all, respect your customers and your prospect, act accordingly, and create trust. Because if you become a bad operator, not respecting things, what you do sort of reflects back on the whole industry. So if we all behave the way we're supposed to behave, we'll all be better off. And if not, then we'll all be worse off. And so just respect and try to create that trust.
Hey, great. Thanks for sharing. And this brings us to the last segment of this episode. Please tell us about any one passion you follow and how it helps you to elevate your profession.
Okay. I love industry awards. And particularly the Echoes, which I know you are familiar with. You've judged Echoes, Shelly, in New York with us. The Echo is the maximum distinction in the world for the best work in data and marketing communications. And I love participating in the Echoes, entering work for my agency and my clients, and I love judging the awards. It's not just the thrill of receiving a trophy and going to the party and doing a press release that we won this trophy, although that is certainly satisfying. I am thoroughly convinced that being part of the Echoes, because I have some 20 years, has made me a much better professional, and I'll tell you why. When I write up the cases, and I quite often do them myself, I don't delegate that to someone else in my agency, despite the fact I'm president of the agency. As I write it up, I realize all the things that we did that were good right on. And then I realized, my God, we forgot to take advantage of this opportunity. We didn't do this. And we could have done it and would have made it even a better campaign. Yeah. And so when you realize that, then you say, well, let's remember this. So the next campaign, we won't forget to do it. And we'll be better marketers, because as we write it down, I think they say what you can write down. If you talk about it, you just talk about it. If you write it down, you really know. And so that's very important. And then I love to judge, because when we judge, we see all the new and fresh and innovative ideas and creative and so forth that the other people are doing in different industries. And we can learn from that and take the inspiration and adapt it. We don't copy, but we adapt that to our own work and our own clients. And so we do better work for them. And finally, since I consider that everyone judging the prizes, or even just many people go through the galleries and they read, let's see who won Gold Echoes in this and that other thing. As they read the cases, they also have an experience like the judges did to see the new and fresh ideas and so forth. So as we judge or we view the work, we are getting inputs to improve our own marketing, and sort of raises the professional standards throughout the entire industry. And that's why I have a passion for awards in general. And the Echo Awards, because that's data and marketing, which is also my passion in particular. So that's one thing I wanted to mention today, and hope that many of your viewers will participate in awards, the Echoes in particular.
Yeah, great. So where can our viewers find you and connect with you?
I would love to receive contacts. My email, I think you're going to want to ask your editors to write this on because it's mteahan@kender.com.r, but the Kender is Qenda. It's a little bit difficult. And also, I'm more than welcome to receive WhatsApp messages, and I've got my telephone number here for you. So I'll give those to you. And if somebody wants to know, it's +54 911 416 49782. But it's not exactly a catchy number, like some of the jingles that they have in the States. I don't know, it's something like 0800 Empire. And it's not easy like that. GlobalDMA.com is easy. My contact details are not, but I'd love to hear from the people.
Okay, great. So this brings to the end of our episode. I just wanted to sum up that marketers are guardians and custodians of a business brand image. Studies have found that misusing user data can have dire consequences for organizations, with about 8 out of 10 customers reporting that they are willing to abandon a brand if their data is used without their knowledge. So keeping consumer privacy and trust at the center of the data strategy is more important than ever. So thank you so much, Mary, for sharing your thoughts on such a critical subject for marketers. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Shelly.
To all our viewers, thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please like it and share it. Also, leave a rating and review. I'll see you next time in a new episode with a new speaker. Till then, peace.